TIKAL is probably a legendary board game in the hobby. This came out, the original one came out in 1998 or 99. It won a Spiel award of some kind in 1999. This is from Kramer and Kiesling, classic design duo. They've got a new version of this out called TIKAL Legend, which is what we have set up on the table. And I mean all of the table.
All of the table. It's quite large, huge table presence. We got the whole big board and then 2 boards on the side as well from what we're drafting from.
Yeah, the new boards over here we'll get to in a second. But what you see out here, by the way, this is a prototype, so some things could change. We do have some deluxe pieces here and there that may or may not be part of whatever option they have on their campaign. But the main board here, which is mostly filling the screen, looks a lot like TIKAL, but like we said, maybe a little bit bigger or larger in size. But in the original TIKAL, you're really just taking a tile off the top of a stack on your turn, placing it, kind of building out from this base camp, and then spending 10 action points to do a wide variety of things. You're spending those points to move some of your explorers around the map, to move around those tiles, to unearth temples, to discover volcanoes, all sorts of things.
Get some treasure.
Get some treasure, build other camps to make traveling a little bit more easily. But a lot of that is still in here, but it's handled in a very different way.
Yeah, so instead of just taking a tile and then doing your 10 action points each turn, we're actually going to start with a draft. So we're going to start with a draft round where we're not just drafting the tiles, but we're drafting tiles, a circle that's going to show you how many action points you get, which could be between we saw between 6 and
12 maybe. Yeah, there's a lot of different action points you can get. So they basically make it so not just the tiles you're going after, but like Emily said, those action points, your turn order in the next round. And then the big thing are these action cards. These action cards let you do, honestly, a lot of the same things you would naturally do, but with weird variations too. Not all of them are just the same actions you'd use action points on. A lot of them literally just let you do some pretty big things for free.
But you might not be able to do otherwise. You have one right here that says it allows you to place down a lake, which normally they don't come out as tiles. Lakes only are going to come out as cards now. And when you do, they have to go in specific spots around the edge of the board. Lakes are important because they're one of the ways that you can score points depending on what you're going for scoring.
Yeah, and another one I have here actually lets you just build 2 or unearth 2 more levels of a temple. If you have some people in the location, you don't have to spend action points. The other thing that's interesting here, in addition to the drafting of all of those things, the turn structure itself is very different. Like we said, the old game had you pulling a tile, spending your 10 action points, next player's turn. This one, after the draft, each player, depending on player count, is going to have at least 1 tile.
Yep. Your action points.
Action points.
At least 3 cards.
Probably 3 cards, depending on player count. A number of cards, and then once everyone's ready, the first player is going to go, and when they go, they don't do all their things. They can do one thing. They could spend all of their action points. When you choose to do that, you are going to do a lot of things, but that is, in and of itself, one thing you could do. Another thing is you could just take your tile and add it to the board.
Yep.
One big difference in this one, in the original game, you had to grow from the base camp. In this one, you can put your tile out anywhere you want on the board, which is interesting. And you might think, well, how are you going to get there? Well, some of those cards allow you a little bit more flexibility with I'm just going to put a base camp down. Boom.
Yes.
And I can put it in a clearing that's across the map. And then now I have access to an area that maybe no one else yet has access to.
Right.
But people are going to start sort of popping up all over the map. You can see right here, the blue player kind of created this own little area until Emily came in so that she could share some of that area and get access to some of those things.
The last thing you can do too is you can use one of your cards, and that's where that flexibility comes in. Because like you said, I have a card right now that allows me to put a base camp down and an explorer on just a clearing. So it could be a clearing anywhere on the board. I can do this one right in the middle, even though I haven't been there before. So these cards, they're only going to allow you to do one very specific thing, but you don't have to spend action points to do it. And it's kind of rule breaking in how it's letting you do them.
Yeah.
So you're all of a sudden getting explorers out into places you wouldn't have been able to before.
Yeah, the action points, when you do spend them in the old game and naturally in this game, for the most part, is where you're going to be able to get more explorers out, move those explorers around. But in Emily's example just now, she could get a base camp down before she uses her action points. And then when it comes back around to her, she has a lot more options in terms of getting some of those explorers out there and getting some things done. Another really cool thing about these cards is some of them have ongoing abilities. By the way, one of the ongoing abilities is to have additional action points no matter when. So I had a couple cards here that each gave me 2, so that no matter what action point token I took, I had 4 extra action points.
David was definitely abusing it.
Yes, I was, and it was very fun. But some of the cards are just one-time actions. When you have them on the right side of your board, that means you had just drafted them. But on your turn, instead of even using a card, you can say, as my turn, I'm going to move that over to the left side of my board, which is where it's going to kind of exist on an ongoing basis until it's used, particularly if it's a one-time use card. But that really lets you delay your turn. You're effectively not taking any action that affects the game board. And you might think, oh, but don't you want to jump on something before someone else does? Sometimes, because sometimes you might want to just go, I want you to spend your action points before I spend mine, because this game is definitely about jockeying for control of some of these spaces.
And I think even more so than the original, because one of those things we're drafting too is going to be the volcano tiles that when they come out, they are going to symbolize that it's time to do scoring. The scoring has a ton of different ways to score. So you're going to be looking at everything. The biggest thing is that you want majority wherever you're at in order to score those points. So when we first draft for that volcano, that's going to be a hot item that people are going to want. So even the turn before, people might be vying for turn orders. That way they could get it first. And then when someone does have the volcano, they don't have to play it their first turn. They can wait and they can start just moving cards over. They can do other little things. They can use their action points. And everyone else around the table is trying to figure out how much can I get done
before they play that
Before they play that.
Yeah, having that volcano has a lot of control. And in the original game, you were just happened to flip it over. And it was a bit of a surprise for everyone. In this case, it is still a bit of a surprise when it comes up. It is in 2 of the specific stacks. You're going to have stacks of tiles that you kind of work your way through in this game, A, B, C, D, etc. The B stack has a volcano in it, just one. And then the D stack also has a volcano in it. So everyone knows that once you get to those stacks, it could come out. But then once someone has it, like Emily said, they have a lot of control in terms of like, okay, should I play this now because I'm in good position and they're going to have a hard time getting position? Or, oh, if I spend a couple turns first, I can get a little bit better position to score. The interesting thing, the way about scoring works is once a volcano comes out, that person scores just for themselves. Then in player turn order, everyone gets 10 points to spend, including the person who played the volcano. So you get 10
action points to start actually doing stuff around the board.
So you can kind of jockey around a little bit. But what it allows for is that the person who plays it gets to score some. Then the next player can actually come in and seize control of even some of the places that first player had.
Yeah, so it's not directly competitive in that it's not like, if you got this volcano, nobody else can ever get this volcano. I come in with 4 guys and get that volcano instead of you. But now that you have a leader there who's worth 3, you wouldn't need 4 more people, and you've made it much harder to get control of something.
Yeah, and it generally, that rule effectively naturally encourages a lot of interaction because I want this. I don't want to necessarily take it from Emily, but I want to score it this turn. So I move my guys in, and then a side effect is I did take it from Emily, and now Emily wants to take it back. So it has some encouragement there in terms of player interaction. The other thing that you can't affect is if you've placed a guardian on one of the temples. You can only do that twice in the game. So you can have 2 temples that have a guardian on them. You're going to... And it's costly. It is costly. 5 action points to put one of your guys on top. And then any other of your explorers, including your leader that were there, they're out of the game. They go away because you're basically, effectively sacrificing them so you can take control of that temple. That is a significant thing because this temple is locked down. No one cares about it really anymore. It is what it is. And I can, other players can kind of shift their focus to the other things that are on the board.
But even if you didn't want to do like the air majority stuff on the board, there's also these treasures that we're uncovering. So a whole nother thing in it is that at these sites, we can find these treasures, which are kind of like a set collection. And if you get the same types, like I have all 5 of these blue ones, then I'm going to get
some big points.
15 points. Just for having those every time we do scoring.
And that all the scoring things happen every time scoring happens. So those 2 volcanoes and at the end of the game, you basically do the same thing where you're spending 10 action points and scoring up all of the things. It is a really interesting game, and I'm kind of shocked that I'd not played it over all of these years. It was something that was always appealing to me. A lot of people told me, "Oh, I really think you'd like TIKAL," and I do. It was a really interesting experience. It is definitely
you're so
a game
combative.
of conflict.
Yes.
It's not you're not like going in and removing other people's
no, you're never
explorers,
like full on fighting.
but it is a jockeying for control. I mean,
Yes.
this game is all about doing that. And you can kind of have your own little space for a while, but like I said, then someone can kind of come swoop in literally and say, "Oh, thanks for building all of that up.
Yeah.
On my turn, I can
gonna
do
add
some
more."
things that are a little like you may not have been expecting." And I think that's the last thing I want to mention. The player powers, those cards, those action cards you're going to get are going to allow you to do some of that. Also, your player character has some powers to use, and these are variable. You kind of randomly get this thing at the beginning of the game. If you don't use a power, you're going to get 5 points at the end of the game. I can tell you, I don't know that 5 points is worth not using their power. I used a power. Emily had built up a tower. I used my power, which was driver, which I was the only person who had this power. I could pick up my leader and move them to any hex. So I moved it over to where she built up.
All the way across the board.
And
stole
said,
it from under me.
"Thank you very much. I'll build the rest of it and jump on top as a guardian." So it has some really kind of swingy, exciting moments like that.
I will say though, for how combative it is, it's still like that fact that when we score, everyone gets 10 action points again to do their own scoring. It's kind of balancing that out. So it's even if it's not like directly fighting, you are also trying to get majority, but then it can swing from one player to the next. And what you had in your turn and scored for could then swing all the way to Alicia when it's her turn and she's scoring.
Yeah, and the scoring, like we said, there's a variety of things that score. And you can score your points in wildly different ways. Some of us were really jumping on those temples early and trying to get control. The volcanoes were kind of up for grabs.
Yep.
Everyone was
They're
kind
big
of like
points.
jumping on them, and then some people were taking control. And like we said, Emily went treasure hunting like crazy. And it should be noted, the treasure hunting in this isn't just about going out and hunting treasure out here. Some of those action cards that you can draft literally just kind of seed your treasure hunting with 2 of any treasure.
Plus, then there's also the action you can take to forcefully trade with other people.
Yeah,
so that you get the
trade.
sets you want.
Yeah, you can basically go, "Oh, I just need 1 more to have 5. Emily has it." You can spend action points to, "Here, you take this one that you don't need, and I'll take the one that I do need." Now, that can go back and forth, but it's a spend of action points that's really interesting. The spending of action points in the original game was interesting. I know it kind of like there's some people who like it, some people who don't. The way it works in this one is so interesting as it goes around the table because like we said earlier, if Emily hasn't spent her action points, it's definitely going to impact on what I do or don't do. I kind of want her to spend them, so now I know she can't really do anything else with her action points this round, and I can do a couple things. I'm like, okay, you can't disrupt what I'm trying to do.
Yep.
Now I will spend my action points.
Or I could be waiting to capitalize on something you're doing. And I'm like, you have a tile that you're about to put out that I really just want you to put out so that way I can move my guys in and take control of it. Or you're about to put 2 free layers and cover on something. I want to go swoop in and take that afterwards. So it's all about timing and who's doing what when.
Yeah, so that is TIKAL Legend. If you have any questions about it at all, please make them in the comments below. We'll get down there and talk to you about all of it. If you're a TIKAL expert and you are like, "Oh, I have a real specific question. How do they do this in this version compared to the last one?" We'll try to answer that. No promises. We're not TIKAL experts, but get down in the comments below. Until next time, though, make sure everyone has fun at the table, and we'll see you then.